So the reason why we are doing this webinar is because product management, it's one of the hottest topics in the industry right now, and it's becoming more and more important to the industry as more and more similar products are coming in the market. There is very fierce competition between companies, and product managers, their duty or their role is to make that product become successful, right? They are sometimes even called the mini CEOs or the CEOs of the product, and that kind of makes the role very interesting. And it's becoming the career choice for a lot of young fellows and young corporates. So it's an interesting field, but it's in the nascent stage right now, and that brings a lot of ambiguity, and that surrounds this field with a lot of ambiguity. And today we have our folks, the senior product managers at Amazon, Rubrik, and Foodpanda, who will be clearing all the doubts that you guys will be pouring in slowly one by one. Okay, so before we actually get into product management in this webinar, let me give you a little bit of brief about Estahire. It won't take a lot of time. Okay, so Estahire, it's basically a technology-driven platform that is revolutionizing the way people find jobs and companies hire people. So recruiters exist, jobs exist, candidates exist, but the problem comes in where they need to connect to each other. So the interaction never happens. So we are fixing this and all of the inefficiencies that the job market has by using state-of-the-art technologies, and giving candidates jobs at top-tier companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and within a span of 3 to 4 days. And our main vision is to ensure that everyone can find their dream jobs. You must be wondering what kind of inefficiencies are we fixing. For example, like take any other job portal like Naukri.com. Once you as a candidate register there, so jobs will be coming and flooding in like crazy. There'll be, and most of them will be irrelevant. You'll have mails pushing in, and you'll have other spams like phone numbers in Naukri.com. Even recruiters at these places aren't happy. For example, I myself, I interned as an HR and in a digital marketing agency, and I personally had to hire a copywriter. Alright, so I went to Naukri.com and I put in all the filters, and even after that, what I got out of that was accountants. And so it's kind of frustrating for the recruiters and the applicants. So how do we do this? How do we fix this? Right, so we have our technology, which is a Cognobot system, and in simple terms, it acts like a human, but it's 100x faster than the normal human beings. So we have the system which basically takes the job profile from one side and takes the applicant's profile from one side and makes the best match between the two, which ultimately helps them to build an easy connection, right? So we have all the big brands like, as I said before, Amazon, Microsoft, Walmart, Target, and we have Fortune 100, most of the companies in here. And when candidates register on our portal, they get interview calls within 24 hours. And it is very, very mean for the technical people. And job profiles, they include a variety of things from HR to product to software engineers, and every profile, you name it, and we have it here. And some of the things that we don't permit recruiters to send mass emails because that kind of acts like a spam. So the reason we don't do that is because our algorithm is so smart that it understands which kind of job will suit which kind of person, right? So there are a lot of benefits when people come in as candidates or as recruiters to our company. And I've personally seen a lot of people bagging their dream job through our portal, and then they reach back out to us, saying that I'm so thankful to this company, and I got into a big company like Uber. So it's the nicest feeling personally for me when people come into us, and say that, okay, because of you, I've bagged this job at this certain company. So, so do try it out. Do log into Estahire and send us your profile, and if you are interested, and tell your friends if they're interested in new jobs or they're looking for a change. Right. Okay, so we'll be taking up a lot of sections in here, which will basically cover what is product management and how to get into product management if you want to become a product manager. Right. So we'll start with you, Suyash. We'd like to know how each one of you define product management, and what does a normal day for a product manager looks like. So Suyash, what about you?
Yeah, thanks first of all, and then let me also congratulate you on this initiative that you guys are driving. I think it's a challenging and a tough problem to solve.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're differentiating yourself for your end customers who are on the call right now. So I think that's a very sort of a broad question to answer. How do we define a product manager? And the reason it's broad is like you mentioned, it's sort of a mini CEO role, right? And what does that really mean? So if you think about a product manager, what they do and own is completely end to end from inception to the delivery and post delivery items that go along with launching a product. Now, what does that mean? So that starts with first defining sort of who your customers are. And then as a PM, you will define who the customers are. You'll also define what problem you're solving for the customer, like how you're adding a value to the customers. Third, you'll work through all the financial and strategic impact of your solution. So, work through the P&L, look at the profit and loss statement, look at what the payback period for a particular initiative that you're driving is. Because when you take on a project, it'll involve engineers working on it, it'll involve people from legal, marketing, tax, technical program management, and then you yourself, QA, the list goes on. So it will be it is usually a very expensive process to launch a technology product. And then there are a lot of follow-ups post-launch as well. So there's definitely need to be a good understanding of what the P&L looks like. Sometimes the P&L doesn't matter if it's strategically that important. So I'll give you an example. For example, if you looked at the payback period of launching a mobile app in India for Amazon versus not launching a mobile app and just having a web-only experience, the payback period for building a cohesive app will definitely be over 1 year. So that means that's when you actually make back the money that you've invested in it. Now, it may be easy to say that, hey, the payback period is longer than 1 year. Most financial institutions or most non-tech institutions, in my experience, would say no to something like that. But then it's important also for you to start thinking long-term from there and see, hey, maybe it doesn't make us money in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to add enough value to the customers. And we're obsessing enough about our customers that they will continue to come back because they have this alternative mobile experience as well. And then, of course, the shift is moving towards a mobile world in India specifically. In US, it's mostly desktop. In India, it's mostly mobile. So again, summing up who your customers are, define what problem it is, financial strategic impact of your project. Then you sort of go along, work with technology, the design folks, to figure out what it would cost to implement something like this. How many hours or how many SDE weeks would it need, and how many engineers would need to work on something like that. Once you get the estimate back, you'll make judgment and trade-off calls in a way that you'll figure out, all right, this particular feature that we originally thought is going to add some value to our particular launch is actually really, really expensive to build. And it's so expensive to build that it's holding other features back. Then you come in as a product manager with your judgment to make a call whether you want to launch that particular feature as a part of your first launch, or you want to bring that as a quick sort of fast follow-up version 2 launch. So that's where your judgment comes in. That's where your prioritization comes in. Then what you do is you create a working backward sort of a launch plan in which, for example, if your launch date is 12/31, you have to launch something by 12/31, then you need to have your QA completed by 11/30 because anything that quality assurance associates find, you have to fix them. And then if QA start is 11:30, then your code complete should be somewhere around 11:15 or 10:30. So you sort of work backwards from what that launch date is to where you are today and try to bridge all the things that need to happen in between and make sure you build a buffer in there. That's very important because unknown things come up in every single project that I've worked on, and they will come up in every single projects that you work on as well, as long as it has a scale and meat in it. And then you'll work with marketing, editorial folks. Also, their estimates will go in this launch plan. And then once you get to a point where the code is complete, the quality assurance folks have verified that everything is working as intended, and then you fix whatever was not working as intended, and you get to a point where you're launching your product. That's when that's actually when 50% of your work will start. You've gotten this point to this point where you're dialing up a web lab. Generally, in technology companies, we put launches behind a web lab. That means your product that you're launching will not be shown to 100% of your customers at once, because it's super complex things usually you launch, and there are super complex technology stacks underneath it as well. So you expose it to 5% of your customers. You would call that as dialing your web lab up at 5%. And then you look at feedback, you look at forums, you look at Facebook, you look at all these other communities, what people are saying about your product. You try to understand if there is something that you have missed, and then you basically correct that, and then you dial up further to 10%. If there's nothing you've missed, you look at the data that's coming out. Hey, the person that has been using this new product that I just launched versus the 95% of the people that are not using this product, how much sales are the folks that are seeing the product are generating, what their conversion numbers are, versus your control group, which does not see the product, and then you compare those conversion numbers. If things look positive, then you continue to dial up, you get to 100%. And then once it's at 100%, there are some mechanisms that you put in place to ensure things sort of run hands off the wheel. So that's an overall why your role or a PM role is sort of a mini CEO role, because you're at the end of the day accountable for everything, responsible for everything. You're involved in everything from end to end, and a day in life of a PM is sort of a combination of all these things. You may not be working on just a single product at a time. There may be multiple products that you're working on. So each product could be in a different state of its product life cycle. So it's also just managing all these moving pieces together. So I think that's what a good PM would be able to do, is have a good judgment, and as you continue to grow in the role, you learn that you'll be able to make more and more complex decisions with less and less information, less and less data. And that grows, that judgment will grow as you continue to work on more and more projects. So that's the sort of long answer, and that's why it's a complex question, because there is no short answer to that.
Yeah, thanks for this answer, Suyash. That was very, very well defined. All right, so Anand, next one to you. You work at an enterprise company, namely Rubrics, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the role there in an enterprise company? How is it different?
Yeah. Good evening, folks, and firstly, compliments to Pranav and team for setting this up. Very excited to be here. So yeah, I mean, as Pranav pointed out, the role of a PM varies in different types of companies. An enterprise PM role has very different responsibilities and a very different set of things that you may be doing versus a PM who's operating in a consumer company. But as far as enterprise startups are concerned, or enterprise companies are concerned, the role of a PM, I would say, is in the center of it all, where right from meeting customers and identifying unmet needs, you're trying to define a customer problem, you're studying the competitive landscape, and then coming up with a potential solution to that particular problem by collaborating with engineering and UX. So it's owning the vision, strategy, and execution of the product from end to end. And it entails on a day-to-day basis working with a bunch of cross-functional teams, as Suyash mentioned, right? It starts with sort of validating a particular hypothesis for a particular problem. You may collaborate with engineering and UX to define that particular solution. And then eventually, as you get closer to product launch, you are then starting to work with your counterparts in product marketing, technical engineering who help you with sales enablement, and then you're also working with pricing teams to decide how to price your product. And then eventually, once the product is launched, you will obviously, as a PM, you would definitely want to monitor adoption and how that particular feature or that product is solving a customer need, and drive further enhancements accordingly. So that's how I would define an enterprise PM role. And yeah, That's what you do typically on a day-to-day basis.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer, Anant. And so we get to Pooja now. Pooja, so we have received a lot of answers regarding what product managers do with their companies. So while I want you to answer that a little bit, I want to specifically know you worked at Amazon as a program manager, and a lot of newcomers have this confusion between what a program manager is and what a product manager is. So how do you explain the differences between these two things?
Hey, hi everybody, and congratulations to Pranav and team for setting this up. And quite excited to be here. It's a very interesting question, and lately it comes pretty frequently. What's the difference between a program and a product manager? To be very honest, if you're working in a startup like a Shoploose or a Food Panda, there's absolutely no difference because there's dearth of program managers there. Primarily, we have product managers who are taking care of both product as well as a program manager role. If you move to bigger organizations, you do have programs and product managers separately. Uh, Putting it in a very layman's language, what I have experienced in my career so far, what a product manager does is he primarily defines a problem and he tries to understand that what is the solution around it. If you're making a product, then what exactly comprises into the product? What problems are you trying to solve through that particular product? What are the features which will go into that product? What is the tech implementation that might be required? You work with various stakeholders in the requirement gathering and all of that. You do monitor, you go ahead, you get the design, you work with the design teams, you work with the operations team, see what will require, then launch and doing an A/B testing, as the Suyash and Anand explained. What a program manager would primarily do in this entire scenario, he looks at that particular thing more from an organization's perspective. So he might be working cross-functionally across different products, and he might look at how that particular product would be developed. Specifically, if I'm talking of a technical program manager, what APIs, what database changes requirements, he would work more closely with the tech teams, and he would actually go ahead and do the resource pooling, which how many resources go into which of the products, and then what is the priority and what is the weekly sprint deliverable for each of it. More from an organization's priority perspective, he would majorly deliver on the how part, how this particular product will be delivered in terms of different sprints. Product manager, on the other hand, is more around defining the features, how that feature might look like, how we're going ahead and launching that particular product, what are the timelines around.
So, how important is tech background for the role of a product manager?
How important is a technical background for the role of an enterprise PM? Correct?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. So in my view, I mean, we are doing software product management. So in my view, it's important to have a right technical skill set to be able to be effective at your job. Having said that, product management as a role itself, there's no reason why one wouldn't be able to ramp up on the skills that are required on a day-to-day basis, get the requisite domain expertise and then start becoming effective at your role. But my personal bias is towards having a technical grounding as far as software product management is concerned.
Okay, so back to you, Suyash. So unlike any other speaker here, like you haven't done any course in engineering or something similar to that. So like, has it been any different for you? I mean, does tech people come up to you and tell you that, oh, you're a product manager without a tech degree? How can you tell me what to do?
Well, I think one of the good things about being a product manager is, especially if you're in a company that sort of understands the benefit of both the product management family and then the tech family, and how working together actually, the sum's sort of always greater than the parts. So if the two ones are working together, it's not necessarily two, it's going to be more than two. And that's very important to, I think, understand. And I've come across this sort of understanding. The product managers with an MBA, with a product degree saying, oh, engineers are just coders and you can get anybody to code and there's no other value. I've seen engineers turn around and say, well, product managers, I tune people out if they have an MBA or, but I don't think that thought process at the end of the day is going to be conducive for the company, and neither it's going to be conducive in solving a problem for the customer. So I think as long as both people are respectful of each of the job families, I think it works best. Now, in my personal experience, in my personal career, when I switched from a product role, so I have some background in physics. So when comes to breaking things down by first principles, looking at a problem, breaking it down to the lowest level you can and approaching it, I think that approach needs to be there. And initially going into a product role in a technology company, especially the company like Amazon, yes, there were moments when I sort of initially doubted myself as, hey, am I ready for this? Am I smart enough to have technical conversations with product managers, other product managers that have a tech background, and senior engineers that are sitting across the table, have PhDs in computer science, have MS in computer science. Going into it, I definitely had that problem, but when I started my role as a product manager, I realized that even like these job families, especially in organizations that are well structured and have been functioning for quite some time, these roles are so well defined that there is a good level of understanding. If I'm talking P&L, if I'm talking financials, I wouldn't think, hey, the engineer is not getting it and they don't understand business. And same way, I haven't seen engineers reciprocate that with, hey, you're not understanding how to write this line of code, so I'm going to stop listening to you. I think it's more about the right engineers or the engineering team would actually look for what value the product managers add. And then the right product managers will look for the right value that the engineers add. And then for me personally, I think with experience, within 6 or 7 months, you will, as a PM without a technical background, be in a position to know what pieces of technical architecture take what amount of time. And then you are able to sort of separate out the complexity of things. If you go through enough sort of high level technical complexities, you'll start to understand in this particular code language, to do something with my system, it takes this much time. To expose an API, it takes this much time. To build a system that talks to 5 other systems will take this much time. So you're able to separate out when the estimates are coming back, what is the right estimate, what level of buffer built, so you can better estimate back from them. So, and then that's sort of evident as well. If you look at my career, that has been evident in the growth trajectory that I've had with a company that sets a really high bar without a tech degree. So I can't speak for others, but in my experience, it hasn't been a hindrance. But one thing I would say is definitely look for a good mentor. If you background, my mentor really sort of instrumental in me getting over those fears initially. And it's very natural to have those fears, but those are not based, those are not going to prevent you to deliver results and improve experience for your customers when you're comparing one-to-one with a PM with a tech degree. And that's just my experience.
All right, well, that's a very fine answer. Okay, all right, so next one to you, Pooja here. So Pooja, what kind of soft skills or, skills which are personal do you believe are required to be a good product manager? Or, some soft skills that you have learned over after coming into product management?
Hey, so apart from the other skills, soft skills are equally important when it comes to a product manager, primarily because you're working across domains, you're working cross-functionally, you're talking to engineers, you're talking to marketing, you're talking to legal, you're talking to customer service, almost everybody that has to do anything with the product. So it's extremely critical how well you communicate with them. And stakeholder management is one of the key skills which is required when you're talking about product management, because how you do a requirement gathering, how well you talk to everybody, how well you can get all the information from every required corner. So I think, and that too in a very quick frame of mind, very quickly and with a very short span of time. You need to be talking to everybody. You need to bring everybody on the same table, because when you're launching a product, you need to have, even before launching the product, first of all, you need to understand, why you're making the product, what all gets into the product. In order to do that, you need to get an understanding from everybody. So you need to have that sort of a rapid across, and then get that information and then go ahead. That's one of the key skills that I think. The second thing is you got to be very assertive. So if you don't believe in something, don't make it. You need to know how to say no. You need to learn how to push back things, because specifically, when you're working in startups, I can speak for it because I've worked very extensively there. There'll be 1,000 things on your table to be working on, and operations will be sitting on your head. You need to work on 10 of these things. You need to deliver it tomorrow. Everybody who you're working with will have different set of priorities for different kind of work, and you are the center of everything, and you are supposed to decide what goes into where. So you need to learn how to prioritize. You need to have the skills to prioritize. You need to have skills to say no to people, and be very assertive in what you're building. And good communication skills definitely come in handy. And I think when you're organizing sprints, or when you're organizing your scrums, how well you communicate with people. I think that's one of the few, I think, soft skills which come in very handy when you're when you're getting into the shoes of a product manager.
Perfect. So
We have Odit Chagas. He's asking, so how can someone with years of software development experience break into a PM role when every company is asking for a PM experience along with that? So who wants to take this one up?
I can take that. I can give
Okay.
some feedback on this. This is Suyash. Hi,
Yeah.
Udit. So I don't think so first of all, the reaction that you're getting, that hey, you only have a tech degree and you don't have business experience or an MBA, so you should not get into product management, is not non-standard. It's a very standard response that folks give. I've had I've had discussions with engineers with an MS who're working as a technical program manager at Amazon, go talk to senior managers in product management, and their answer to them has just been go get an MBA. So it can't be further from the truth. I would say that if you're getting that pushback, try to reach out to folks. Look at folks' LinkedIn profile. Try to reach out to folks that neither have, that don't have an MBA necessarily, that don't come from that background, or talk to a company like Instahyre. They may be able to connect you, but definitely seek out folks that have been through this, because in the right way. I don't have an MBA. I don't have an engineering degree, and I still have had. My career has been successful at Amazon without either. From my personal experience, I can tell you that it is not important. It is the wrong way to look at it. That you need an MBA to be a PM. And if you are facing that, the advice would be try to seek out people. Just talk to more and more people, and then if you so it's going to be a huge bucket of people that you can go talk to. If you were to prioritize that bucket, I would prioritize it by looking at LinkedIn profiles, seeing who actually has not had that sort of traditional standard and still has been successful PM. You can look at profiles and say who has been successful versus not. Reach out to those folks and ask for a job there. So it doesn't hurt to reach out to folks on LinkedIn and ask them to hire you. Do that. That's your way into product management, and then you can move to any other company because you have their standard sort of checklist of what a product manager is.
So we have Rohit Kumar. He wants to know how can we relate sales to product management? How they switch from sales to product management? So who wants to answer that?
Yeah, I can take a stab. I mean, if you look at the benefits of being in a sales role, I think being at the forefront in the field out there, talking and engaging with customers day in, day out, they have the most customer insight, right? So that's a big benefit. Whoever has the most customer insight is the most powerful person, or is most equipped to understand problems and then define a hypothesis and try and look at ways and how best you can solve that. So if you have empathy, there are certain transferable skills from a sales standpoint. I would advise either look for a role or shadow a PM in your current company if you're working in a product based company. And definitely, I mean, the transferable skills as well as the ability to identify customer problems and engage them would help you eventually to shadow and then move into a full-time PM gig. And I've seen all sorts of examples, right? People, sometimes the best PMs that I've worked with are coming directly from engineering roles. I've seen people from customer support, sales engineering move into PM, from QA move into PM. So absolutely, there's no hard and fast rules that you need a specific degree or a certain qualification. You just need to find the right mentor, and the best way is to explore a path in your current companies, find someone who can support you, reach out to PMs in your existing companies, and I'm sure you'll get there. Just keep hustling.
All right, that's perfect. You need to keep hustling, of course. That's the key to reach anywhere in life. Anyway, so there's this guy called Shashant. He's asking, if I start my own business at a small level, do I need a product manager? So of course that's gonna be a very long answer. You need tons of information to really answer that question. You need to know, what do you have, a product, do you have a service, or do you have, who are you selling to? You need a lot of answers, but someone give me an answer in a crisp manner to this one.
So what was the question again?
The question is, if I start my business at a very small level, do I need a product manager? So like, how do I decide if I need a product manager or not in my company?
Well, you should be the product manager if you're starting the business. Like, that's the idea.
Yeah, I would agree.
If you're starting small, you should. All right. Okay, so someone is asking, I think this might be a good one for Anant. So Anant, someone's asking, how can someone shift from an enterprise company, a PM role, to a consumer facing role, and how difficult would it be?
Yeah, probably Suyash and Pooja can also chime in. I mean, I've not worked in a consumer-faced PM role, but I assume, I mean, given the PM skill set itself is transferable, the domain knowledge or the specific sector, the sector in which that particular consumer company is in, if that is not requiring a very specific skill set in that particular domain, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to switch into a consumer company with PM experience. So, I mean, as far as the job goes, there's a lot of things that will be common on a day-to-day basis.
All right. Any insights by Pooja or Suyash on this? Or should we move to the next question?
Can you please repeat the question? My call cut off in the middle.
Yeah, so someone asked us, how can someone shift from an enterprise PM role to a consumer-facing PM role?
Got it. So I think the core skills of what everybody, Anant and Pooja and I have been talking about, I think if you look at what the skills we're saying, the day in life we're describing, it's almost all the same. So I think the skills of a core PM are going to be very transferable to the skills of either enterprise or a consumer-facing product role. So I don't think you need to worry. You will lose whatever domain knowledge that you have that is specific to being in the enterprise industry. But that goes along with any sort of career change that you make. But what you will have with you is that experience of what everybody touched on, defining what the problem is, defining who the customers are, aligning stakeholders, getting the P&L, experimenting, launching, all that stays the same. So I think it's not that a big deal, other than just the domain knowledge change.
Yeah. So Pranav, just to add over here to what said, I myself have moved from a SaaS product to a consumer-facing product. So I had developed the entire SOA platform, and then I moved to payments, and then login, and then entire recommendations. So I think it depends upon where you're interested in. The core skills still remain the same. As far as understanding the product and the metrics and how the funnel works, that is something that you can gain over time.
Perfect. Basically, it's all about hustling, and if you're willing to get to the skills, right? Okay, so the next question is asked by Saurabh. Now, Saurabh is asking, how do you guys manage user experience aspect as the of the products that you are part of? How do you manage the UX? Basically, is what he's asking in simple terms.
Sorry, I can take a stab at it. So, I mean, I consider PM as I operate in a model where we are three-person in a garage type of model where I've got my lead engineer and my UX counterpart working to validate a particular hypothesis that we've developed to solve a problem. So we get on a bunch of calls with customers, walk them through the mocks that we may have, and then validate not just the proposed workflow that we may have come up with, but also elicit more inputs in other unmet needs that may exist, right? And through these iterative discussions that you have with not just customers but also the field, over time you will be able to define a workflow that works really well for customers. And aside of that, we also have user studies where in controlled environments we sort of enable access to workflows where we observe customers try out the workflow, or there'll be a specific set of questions from the UX team in, if there was a particular workflow where I had to go through a bunch of steps to place an order for an item, right? There'll be questions around how easy was it, was there any drop off rates that happened, so on and so forth. So through these validations, you can define an ideal customer experience.
Right. So Suyesh, you wanted to add something to it.
Uh, well, I mean, the only thing I would add, I agree. Some of the tools and mechanisms that Anand mentioned, usability studies, I think, and talking to the customers, in my experience, the best one has been talking to the customers. Walk your customers through your product, like whatever version you have it, walk them through the product, because that's eventually the questions that when you open the floodgates up and launch it to hundreds and thousands, lakhs or crores of customers, those are the questions those customers are also likely to have. So have those sessions with your customers, perform usability studies, talk to folks who are in the similar field, who have maybe more experience than you. They'll give you some feedback and be able to look at it from different angles. So I think this is all what Anand mentioned, and I'm just more vehemently agreeing with what he said. But outside of that, especially in non-startup organizations, sometimes you'll have two kinds of projects. One, just like the one more startup one that Anand mentioned, and then the second one would be something that's really well funded. All the VPs across the board are super excited about it. Those projects, the difference there is you'll have a sort of a senior UX lead assigned to it, or maybe sometimes even a team of UX leads assigned to it. So they'll be doing a bunch of heavy lifting, then consulting with you as a PM to make sure that they're addressing all the problems and they're following that working backwards approach that Anand talked about. You start from the customer and then bring those learnings back into your product. Those things are going to continue to be true, but in some of the very well-funded projects, you'll also have these responsibilities that will be very heavily shared with a UX team.
Okay, so someone's asking, like, what kind of softwares or, specific applications do you guys use that, I'm aspiring to be a product manager in future. So what should I learn? What kind of softwares or tools should I, learn and then get into product management?
For me, one of the things, this is Suyash, for me, one of the things that was really helpful is just knowing SQL, because one of the things as a PM you'll be doing is working with data quite a lot. And just having the ability to extract data is one thing. But again, so when I started in Amazon, we had product managers that were hired that were sociology majors, that were philosophy majors, that were arts and music majors. I didn't know, and I know, and some of these people were from just the top universities, and some were not. I think the approach, though, that Amazon took with our group of hiring us was that all these skills and tools are something that are really easy to learn on the job as well, and it does not take time to learn. And in different companies, will be using different tools as well. So if I was to build the right skill sets, I would worry less about the tools outside of just having a basic working knowledge of SQL, but worry more about critical problem solving. Push yourself to look at case studies, push yourself to talk to PMs, and discuss complex business problems, read the latest, whatever is going on. For example, Berkshire Hathaway spending money in Paytm, and Paytm moving up to a Paytm mall instead of just being this payments provider, and talk about those complex strategic decisions with people that have been in this industry for a while. And then you'll get a sense of how they think about problems. One of the biggest benefits to me was, and the credit goes to, in particular, one manager that I had that used to break these things down with me. And I got the ability to sit with him every other day in the room. And then he would go through his thought process. And I would look at why is he asking certain questions, specific questions. And then later on, it would make sense. Okay, so that's the thought process that he's coming with. Sometimes going from engineering also to, or going from a natural sciences degree to business problem solving, the way of thinking is a little bit different. So find good mentors, talk to them about challenging problems, look at how they approach it, understand what critical thinking is. That will set you up in the long term to be a more successful product manager. Tools, in my opinion, is something that you can learn on the job. But I do get that some companies have this sort of bar that you need to know XYZ tool. Thankfully, I haven't come across that in my career, so won't be able to speak to those specific bars. But the best long-term advice I'll give you is focus on critical problem solving rather than tools.
Perfect. So keep learning is the answer to you in short. All right, so one more interesting question is, how is machine learning influencing PM? Someone's just asked this. How is machine learning influencing PM? That's very interesting. Yeah. So Pooja, do you want to take this up?
Sure, I can take this up. So talking very specifically, from the startup perspective, first of all, machine learning is something that most of the product managers themselves, some of them are aware of. They have done courses around it. Most of them, they haven't. So we do have a team with us who sits with us, who know, they know Python, they know R, they know machine learning. And we come up with problems. And when it comes about deciding this, so we come up with variables, what exactly needs to be analyzed. When it comes to building those tools around it, we have a team who helps us with that. So, I mean, a basic analysis, analytics knowledge is something which is good to have for all the PMs, because you need to do a lot of slicing and dicing of the data. You need to do some data crunching around it. You need to understand, what are the dependent variables on which, if you're doing an analysis, what variables do you need in that particular analysis, what the outcome and all of that. And if you can do a basic of it, is something that is critical, and that is always good to have. Then, if at all it comes upon, writing the code and writing Python and all of that, you always have a supporting team who does that. It could differ from organization to organization, but as of now, as per my experience, is how it's been.
Yeah, so I'll just chime in, and that's also been my experience. The machine learning at this point is nothing more than, if you look at a graph, x-axis being precision, x-axis being coverage, y-axis being precision. All machine learning is doing, it's a model that's finding sort of the best optimal point of where the accuracy of the model is the highest. And that graph is going to move a dot from precision and coverage. So the more coverage you want, so if you have 100 customers and you want to cover all 100 customers with greater than 90% accuracy, that's going to be really hard for models today to do. So generally what you'll find is, as you continue to expand your coverage, the accuracy will fall. And as you continue to expand your accuracy, the coverage will fall as well. And yeah, there are generally machine learning scientists that work on it. I agree completely with Pooja that even in the bigger organizations, that these this is not a core PM skill that at least is needed today for you to write models, figure out the neural networks, and that's something that a specific team will do. What you need to be able to do is define what the problem is and then help with them to optimize the model. So core skills, I don't see today, and I cannot foresee in the near future a PM requiring core machine learning skills, because it's a very sort of specific job family that people are really good at, but it doesn't overlap necessarily. The core skill sets don't overlap with the PM role. They benefit each other greatly.
Perfect. Okay, so we've talked a lot about skills and what is needed to become a good product manager. So someone's now asking, he wants to know what kind of questions can a PM interviewee ask in an interview? So like what kind of questions were you asked when you gave your interviews?
So I can take a quick stab. I mean, again, it varies by company, by stage of the company, but a lot of questions will be divided into three parts. One would be around analytical skills, right? The other would be behavioral type questions where you're given a particular scenario and then you have to explain how you would approach that particular situation or how you would solve that problem and an example from your previous work experience. And third is more around the specific domain, right? If I mean, rubric today is in the cloud data management domain, so certain questions, some companies may also prefer some domain specific expertise, so you may be asked questions around that as well. So these are the three broad areas that you may be interviewed on. Having said that, there's a wealth of resources out there in terms of what could be the typical questions. There are a few very good books, and happy to pass on some references at the end of this webinar.
Perfect. We'll take those books and add up in the description there. So, who tell me this? Like, where should ultimately, once you start working as a PM, where should one, look in long term? You're working as a product manager, then as a senior product manager. Where should you aim at? Like, should you be aiming at becoming a CEO of some kind of a company or something like that? Because right now you're called mini CEOs, so we'll take up the next notch to CEO.
I can take a stab at that. I think it's a personal decision. I think if you want to be a CEO, then I think product management is not a bad place to be. Definitely, you'll work much harder, but much longer hours, and then continue to deliver results at a bigger and bigger scale. So, if you want to be a CEO, absolutely take that path. If you don't want to be a CEO and you're okay with so before I get into the second part, the way the hierarchy would generally work, and I'm talking about sort of Amazon in general. I wouldn't know outside of it, so would love to see other folks chime in to say how it is in their organizations. But it is like that. You go from a product manager to a senior product manager, to a senior manager of product management, then director of product management, then VP of product management, then senior vice president, and then eventually CEO. And then where are you in your life is going to decide that. How much time you want to dedicate to your family versus work is going to decide that. How much value you give to what is going to decide that. Neither one is good or bad, but it's different for everybody. So first, figure out what that is for you, where that precision and accuracy, if you will, that graph is for you, where you get the maximum benefit from family and then work. And then make that decision for yourself. But if you want to be a CEO, this is not a bad place to be.
All right. So, Pooja, next one is for you. Someone is asking the question which I wanted to ask you. Okay, so this is fairly, getting into a BTech degree or IT colleges is it's fairly male dominated per se, right? So how did you plan to get into, doing BTech and then doing an MBA, then, being into product management, where I see most of the people, even on LinkedIn, as I saw, were guys. So has it been any different for you, or is this the same?
I think absolutely not. I mean, it's been the same. I was interested in something and I went for it. I really don't think, and it might be fortunately, it's been my experience that I've been treated any differently, whether it came to getting a certain designation, whether it came to getting a certain compensation. I don't think there's been any disparity around it. So I've been fortunate in that sense. I've worked across organizations. I've worked with Amazon. I've worked with startups. And I don't think people treat you any differently just because you're the other gender. And it's been a great experience so far. And when I am interviewing somebody and when I was being interviewed, I don't think that's one of the criteria people look for. A lot of times it's even preferred because maybe, when you are there, you might come up with a different perspective depending upon, certain domains and certain business lines where, having a female, on the table might give you a different perspective altogether. In a lot of organizations, it's preferred. And I have worked under, a female managers. I have mentored male product managers. So I don't think there's a problem in the industry itself. I feel the problem is more on the demand side or more on the supply side than on the demand side. People are ready to hire female managers. They welcome them, with open hands. But I think there are less of female managers who are coming up, specifically in the tech and the product domain.
Agreed. I agree. Okay, so Suyash, I hope everybody can hear me clearly. Suyash, the next one for you. You have spent quite a few years in the US, right? So you were a product manager there as well and in India. So, within the space of Amazon even, like, have you seen any difference between how it is approached there in the US and here in the India?
I think that's a good question. Overall, looking at how product management is approached, how a business problem is approached, I don't think it is that different. Some of the differences that I've found is, so Amazon Seattle, where I have worked for the last 5.5 years, is very close to the culture itself. So Amazon has these list of leadership principles, and they're very basic things. Like, I mean, you look at them, and then you see that they're very obvious, and most of the time, sort of the big things and the right answers are sort of in front of us. They are very obvious. So I think those leadership principles being closer to Seattle and those leadership principles being generated in Seattle are a lot better understood. As opposed to moving away in India, you see some of that drop. I'll give you one example. So, for example, failure is one big thing about being a product manager because, like, if you're only succeeding at the things that you're doing, then you're not taking enough risks. You're not trying new things. You're only doing things that you are certain are going to work. So you're only doing the easy things. But if you all the big ideas that you will see, for example, and I can only talk about the company that I have the most experience with. But if you think about Prime, Amazon Prime, if you think about AWS, nobody did AWS for 7 years after Amazon started AWS, Amazon Web Services. So that was a risk somebody took that's paying off now, and paying off to the point that it's greatly paying off. It's contributing a lot to what the stock market values Amazon as of today. So I think that the propensity to fail is a little bit lower here. And it's a bit higher there. People embrace failure a little bit more because it tells them that, you were experimenting, you were not sure of what you were doing, but you were able to derive some learnings from that failure. And then the next attempt that you take at that problem or some other problem, you'll be able to draw from those learnings and then launch a much better product. But I mean, it also shouldn't be that you're failing constantly, but whenever you fail, you sort of celebrate and embrace that failures and then the learnings that come from it. The other thing that I noticed here is generally people here in India, PMs in India are a lot more savvy on how to solve problems. So I can give some examples, but I would rather not, because they solved the problem, but they didn't take the straight path to the problem. They went around it in a couple of ways. But the thing is, they solved the problem, and the space at which Amazon was growing in India, it needed that kind of a solution. So I think savviness is very. I found that to be present generally in a lot more people here versus some long-term thinking a lot more in product management in the US. So that's just been my experience, and I know it differs from person to person.
Right. Okay. So there is one person, Ruksha Chalu. She's saying, "Can you all be our mentors?" Ruksha, I'll send you the link to their LinkedIn profiles. You can go and ask them. Okay, there's one more question which says, if there is already a product in the market and you are bringing out a similar product, so how do I make it different? How do I make an impact while bringing it out? How do I tell people that, okay, what I'm bringing out is probably better for you? How do I do that? How do I create an impact is what he specifically asked.
Yeah, I would. Sorry, go ahead, Suyash.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would never start with that premise of looking at a competitor's product and then figuring a way out to come up with a similar product. I would rather try and identify the customer need, the customer problem that you're trying to solve. It may just happen that a particular competitor who may have had his or her product out there for years, or it may have been out there for a few months, they may have solved it in a way that still not address the customer need. So you need to understand what the unmet need is, exploit and identify those gaps, and then really come up with a solution that addresses that gap, right? I mean, in the enterprise space, we compete against vendors that have been there for the last 20, 25 years, but we beat them day in, day out in the field. And the problem remains the same, but how the problem was solved is where the differentiation comes in, and that's when you solve a compelling need for a customer. So that's how I would look at it.
Perfect. Suyash, do you want to pour in some insights on this one?
Yeah, that was it. I think he put it really well. You shouldn't be looking at competition. Ask yourself really what problem you're solving, and if you're really launching a similar product, there's already somebody else solving that problem for the customers. Then also that is sort of a signal for you to start pushing yourself to figure out how are you really different, or what else are you doing for the customers that the other person is not thinking about. And then don't focus on the competition that much, and then that will allow you not to focus on the competition that much, because you're actually adding some value that nobody else is at. So try to differentiate your product, try to solve problems that the other product hasn't, and that will allow you to not focus on your competition, because that will get customers over to you.
All right. Okay, so we are getting in a lot of repeated questions. So in case you have more, please put in. Okay, so someone has asked, what differentiates an average PM from an exceptional PM? And the next part is interested. How do I manifest it in a day-to-day work life? Who wants to take this one up now?
I can just pinpoint a couple of things, and probably Suresh and Anand can add on that. I think one thing that really differentiates a PM, specifically, is how data-driven you are. So if you are trying to solve a particular problem, you need to understand what your baseline is and what are the success metrics around it. You need to be able to measure a thing in order to solve it and in order to see what the outcome is. So a good product manager will always measure and have a very good tracking around it. Whenever he's releasing the product, he needs to have a very good tracking if he's doing an A/B testing, if he's releasing it to a particular population, and even before releasing the product full-fledged. He would do a VOC, he would understand his metrics, he would understand his numbers, and see what is working for him, what is not working for him, in a very incremental and a regular manner. Not wait for the entire product to be launched and then see what the numbers are working on it. So do a POC around it, monitor your product day in, day out, and see how your product is performing. I think it's extremely critical to be very data driven, to be very focus on your numbers.
Yeah, I would agree. And then I would also add that all the metrics and all the data that you're tracking that to make sure that the product that you're launching for, be it enterprise or be it a consumer-facing product, it is geared towards a customer at the end of the day. And good product managers will always not just think about the customers, but they'll obsess over the customers. You'll not only look at Facebook for feedback, you'll look at 5 other places for their feedback. You will know what the success metrics are. You will talk to enough customers, and your thought process has to be, and the problem solving also has to start from the customer. That, hey, here's the problem, and when you're defining the problem itself, with the very first stage, that has to start with the customer. The customer should be there from A to Z till the end of the product, and then some of the sort of, if you will, a rule book for a good product manager is exactly what Pooja said and we've talked about, is writing a good BRD, writing a good PR FAQ, having success metrics defined prior to launch, having all the ETLs or however you're going to measure those set up, and you constantly measure that. You look for fluctuations, you catch errors early on. That allows you to, if you look for some data-driven fluctuation, you will know that something is broken and where it's broken for you to go fix that before it becomes a much bigger thing. And I think, yeah, just having those locked down, what the product lifecycle is, and actually working towards that, and thinking about your customers from beginning to end, and there's not ever too much thinking about your customers. Those are the things that I think would separate out a good versus a better product manager.
Okay, so someone is asking, so I'm taking up a PM role in sooner future, and since you guys have been PM for so long, what kind of mistakes can I make very unintentionally while being a PM? Like, he's basically asking if you guys have made any mistakes and want to tell this right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say that there could be very minor things. I mean, at the end of it, you're trying to solve customer problems, and you may think that a particular approach, it's not going to impact anyone, and you may end up taking a decision without really having validated, because it's a checkbox that needs to be placed, enabled, disabled, the default behavior. And you may end up taking a decision that in turn backfires because you ended up releasing that without field or customer validation, without thinking through the end-to-end workflow. So I would say that be very conscious, as Suresh and Pooja have pointed out, be customer obsessed, and always validate whatever hypothesis, whatever assumptions you're making for any solution that you build. So that's one thing to be aware of. That's what I would call out.
Yeah, just to add on what Anand said, I think it makes extreme sense, that you're monitoring your product across, and then you're taking, because customer is the end consumer of it. He is the one who needs to, you are solving for his need. So you need to be aware of it, that what problem you're solving. And you might build a very fancy product, and it's happened with us. You build a lot of features around it with a great UI, but the consumer will not end up using it. So you need to be aware of it. I think second thing, which we learned from our mentor, which is very specific, whenever you want to collect feedback on any product, be it UI, be it wireframes, be it features, do it when it is in the most raw form. Because when you build something and then you collect a VOC around it, people might hesitate because you've already reached to a certain extent. And it's difficult for you to change it. So there might be inhibitions in them to share feedback around it. So it's always good, if you are getting the feedbacks when your product is more raw, rather than taking it to a certain extent and getting feedbacks around it.
Very interesting one. Okay, so Anand, we'll take a final question from you and everybody else. So someone's asking, what's the most satisfying part of being a product manager?
Without doubt, I think launching a product and seeing the impact that it has with customers, right? That has the greatest satisfaction. I mean, seeing your work come to life, and then seeing customers raving about a particular need. And then side effects of this are obviously the sales of that product. It could be, marketing teams may have been able to write brilliant case studies about it. The analyst community may have recognized it, but nothing comes close to customers' needs getting fulfilled.
So I believe, Anand, you need to sign off now. So before going, just a little intro about yourself.
Intro about myself?
Yeah, we haven't done intros, right? So
yeah, so I mean, I've little over 10 years of industry experience. I have an engineering background, born and brought up in Pune. I started out as a software engineer in Accenture. I was with them for a little over 4 years, after which I did my MBA from Imperial College London. And then that's when I got into product. Dhruva is the first PM role that I got right out of school. So it's a Sequoia-funded startup based out of Pune. After which I joined Estahire Networks, which was acquired by McAfee. And then today I'm at Rubrik. So yeah, a lot of experience in the enterprise PM space.
right. So Pooja, do you want to answer that question? Like, what's the most satisfying part about being a PM?
I think absolutely 100% with what Anand said. There's nothing like, seeing your product getting launched in the market. There's also not, it's also the most anxious moment. It brings in a lot of anxiety, but it's also the most satisfying when you see good reviews, on the Play Store about your product. That's the best part, about launching any product in the market.
Of course, of course, of course. Okay, so Pooja, a little intro about yourself, then we'll sign off one by one.
Sure. So about myself, I have around 7 years of experience in the industry. Born and brought up in Allahabad. I started my career with Infosys. I'm an engineer, coded for around 2.5 years. After that, I did my MBA from SPJ in Mumbai. I interned with Amazon. I got a convert, worked with them for 15 months, got married, and you have a price to pay. So I moved to Gurgaon, worked with a couple of startups, and I think it's been an amazing journey. When it comes to startup, you're on your foot, you're working day in and day night. Food found out since the last 3 months when we have worked, we have not taken a single off. We've been working on weekends. We've been working till 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock at night. But it's amazing, when you see how your product grows, and we have grown like 10 times in past 3 months. So I think being in the product space is extremely, extremely amazing.
Perfect.
Okay, guys, so I guess Suyash has left the group chat. I think he had one more meeting to attend. Okay, thank you both for coming up and joining us and answering all these questions that came up by our viewers. There were a lot more, but probably next time we'll take up these, the next session, then when we'll have, I'll save these up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pranav, again, and great pleasure to do this with Pooja and Suyash, and wishing everyone all the very best. Thanks. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Good night.
All right, good night.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Johnny, for joining in. We'll be signing off now.